Hello there. Let's talk about nadis. Nadis is related to the prana, which we discussed in a previous video. And just a brief recap about what prana is. Prana flows in and out of the body. The question may arise, okay, we know what prana is now. What does that mean? And what does that have to do with the chakras? Let me explain. So in the same way that water actually flows over different parts of the earth, or we take electricity, for example, the way it flows through a specific source like a power plant, prana actually moves through our vessel kind of in a similar way. Really, it is the same way. And it moves through certain channels or meridians of energy. And again, we're talking in Sanskrit. That's the language of the chakra. So the word nadi, and going back to even Chinese medicine, they actually referred to it as meridians or channels. So it's the same concept of water and electricity, as we just stated, and how they flow. And the actual technical term for Sanskrit, the root word from Nadi is Nad, or N-A-D, which means movement. And this word definitely is used quite often in yogic texts around yoga, and then also Hindu texts as well. And so when it comes to the body, we're talking about our blood vessels, we're talking about arteries, we're talking about nerves, we're talking about, I believe, even the breathing tubes, if I'm not mistaken. All of these are referred as nadi or nadis. I think that's plural, because they're passageways in which something flows, right? Whether it's liquid like water or whether it's energy, right? It's referring to the channels that carry something. And so nadis generally refer to specific channels that carry life force energy. And we did talk about that in previous videos. The prana, right? Remember the prana? If you haven't watched it, feel free to go back and take a listen. It's about a 10-15 minute video, but it shows how this can relate to healers who are actually very learned in the nadis, or the energy pathways, or the meridians. And they actually use this knowledge as they practice. And one example of how they would use this would be like understanding how the energy pathways connect to different parts of the body and different organs. You know, knowing that a particular meridian, for instance, could be connected to the stomach. That same pathway or meridian could also be connected to, say, the knee joint, right? And so we take a person who actually is suffering with some type of knee arthritis, might also suffer from stomach issues. And so it's because that same pathway passes along those two places in the body. So it has a lot to do with where the energy passages or the energy passageways are flowing through the body or linked to certain organs, right? And there's many different resources about the Nadi that we can study, and courses, you know, where we can find out where these pathways are. There's so many, it's limitless. And it could actually send you down a rabbit trail, a rabbit hole, If you like that kind of stuff and like to study and find out, just random things like that, you might enjoy this. But it's just the idea that we have thousands of these nadis, or these passageways in our body. But for the sake of what we're talking about today, there's 3 important ones that we're concerned with as it pertains to chakra and prana. And that is the Sushumna Nadi, the Ida Nadi, and the Pingala Nadi. Those are the 3 we're concerned with today. Now, the Sushumna Nadi is actually the largest central energy channel that runs along the spine, the actual spinal column, from the base of our spine all the way up to the crown of the head. The Ida Nadi, I'm going to get tongue-tied a lot here. The Ida Nadi is the energy channel that carries feminine energy from the base of the spine to the left side of the Sushumna Nadi. Then it coils around the spine in opposition to the Pingala Nadi, and it ends up at the left nostril, right? I know this looks like you're right, but it's actually my left. And then when it comes to the Pingala Nadi, it's the energy channel that carries masculine energy from the base of the spine to the right of the Sushumna Nadi. And then it coils around the spine in opposition to the Ida Nadi. And it ends up on the right side of the nostril. And so the Sushumna Nadi is actually one of the most important nadis in the body. It's central, and it runs along the midline of the body, a little bit on the right side of the spinal column, but it runs along the central point of the body. It's not the spinal column, but it coincides with the spinal column. And this nadi begins at our first chakra, right? Which is what we've come to understand is our root chakra, the first one, down at the base of our spine. And it actually ends up all the way up here at our 7th chakra, which is the crown chakra, right? So from all the way from the base of the spine, it travels all the way up to the crown chakra, the 7th chakra. And this nadi actually pierces through each one of the chakras as it moves up. And it's somewhere around, say, the 6th chakra, our 3rd eye chakra, behind the forehead, where this nadi actually, the Sushumna nadi, actually divides in two, like a fork, right? But it divides like this. So it divides front and back. So for the front side, it's traveling up like this, and when it gets about here, that's when it divides. And the front side actually moves up like this, right to the 7th chakra, the crown chakra. And then the back side actually moves up around the back side of the brain, and it meets this front side at the top of the 7th chakra. That's the Sushumni Nadi. Now, this is important because this channel actually carries the Kundalini energy, which we've yet to discuss, but I'm going to do a video on that very shortly as well, because I feel like that's very significant and an important part of the chakra system that we need to know about. But the Sushumna Nadi carries the Kundalini energy from the base of the spine all the way up to the crown of the head. And then it reaches what we call the Sahasrara, which is the Kundalini. That's another word for Kundalini. Now, in order to ascend through the Sushumna Nadi, the Kundalini has to move through these primary 7 chakras, right, along our spine, all the way from the base, all the way to the top. And in order to do that, in order for that to happen, for the Kundalini to rise from the base to the chakra, for energy to pass through all of these chakra energy centers, what we've come to find out is the chakras need to be open, they need to be healthy and free-flowing, right? Now, as for the Ida and the Pingala nadis, those two we just mentioned, they do wrap around the Sushumna, right? And those are important nadis as well, as they cross each other on their way up. They recross. And it's interesting because they recross at every chakra. So they cross 7 times. We have 7 chakras from the base to the top. They cross 7 times. So the Ida and the Pingali nadis also begin at the base of the spine. One to the left of the spine and one to the right, respectively to the right of the Sushumna Nadi and the left. And some may say that it actually starts a little bit higher, like maybe the 2nd chakra or the 3rd one, the sacral or the solar plexus. But for this particular seeding of information, we're just going to say it starts where the Sushumna starts, at the root. Okay, that way they all start together. It makes sense. And so they all start down at the root chakra, at the base of our actual system, down by the root chakra, our 1st chakra, the base of the spine, right? And so the Ida and the Pingali actually coil around the Sushumna Nadi in a sort of double helix pattern, intertwining and crossing each other at each chakra point. So again, there's 7 chakra points where the Ida and the Pingali cross over each other. And as you can see here, I'll put a description here. As you can see, this is actually comparative or comparable to the structure or the strand of the DNA as we know it. You know, when we put a picture to it, it looks very much like this. Also, this symbol is also something that we see in the medical field quite often as well, where you see the 2 snakes intertwined along the staff going up, right? We usually see that as well when it comes to healing medical modalities. We'll see that. And so this is actually, those 2 snakes, by the way, are actually the Ida and the Pingali Nadi. And so this is actually an appropriate way to actually understand or see this. It's also comparison to the concept of in Chinese, when we talk about the yin and the yang energy. Both the Ida and the Pingali both carry their separate kinds of energy. And for the Ida Nadi, the Ida actually transports lunar feminine energy. And so this energy is very calming. It's cooling. It's very meditative. It's receptive. You know, it's open energy and centered. And so this energy is good for channeling during meditation, as opposed to the Pingala Nadi energy, which is very active and energetic and heating. It's very hot energy, fiery energy rather, and it's very forceful energy. And this energy is actually good to channel when you need to get things done, you know. And so when you breathe out of your left nostril, you're tapping into the itis energy. And when you breathe out of your right nostril, you're actually tapping into and channeling Pingala's energy. And so it is believed that at certain times of the day, when we tend to breathe primarily out of one nostril or the other, without even realizing it. This happens, you know, subconsciously or unconsciously. And that nostril that's dominant in any given point in time in the day, it's believed that that is the energy that's flowing in you at that moment in time. It's either Ida or Pingala. And for a few breaths each hour, when our breathing is shifting from one nostril over to the other unconsciously, we breathe out of both of them. There are times when we actually breathing out of both of the nostrils at the same time. When this happens, we're activating the Sushumna Nadi. And then there's what we call the pranayama exercises, right? And so there is a kind of like a discipline when it comes to how we can train and channel our breath to infuse our bodies with prana. And this can also influence channels, the breathing channels and the energy channels that we use as well. There's a method called the Nadi Shadhana, I believe is the name of it, where we alternate nostrils intentionally, helping to balance the prana along the Ida and the Pingala by actually purposefully inhaling through one nostril while holding the other nostril closed. And then we alternate and hold the other nostril closed while inhaling out of the opposite nostril. Yeah. Then inhaling and switching again. You know, it turns into an intentional breathing meditation or focus. And so the reason why it's important to understand the Ida and the Pingala is because when you're working with chakras, which we're talking about right now, this can be very helpful, this information, depending on what it is that we're working through as it pertains to the chakras, whether it's a chakra that is blocked or overloaded, right? So take, for instance, the Ida Nadi specifically can help calm, because that's the feminine energy. It can help calm and dissipate any overloaded chakras. While the Pingala, which is masculine energy, can help energize and open our blocked chakras. And Ida energy is good for meditation, while the Pingala energy is good for invigorating and preparing for exercise, right? And it's through the energy that we are able to funnel these types of energies and intentions through our body. And then when we're done with this series, this 7-episode series that I'm working through with the 7 chakras, I definitely do want to tap into some exercises implementing what we're learning to experience the Sushumna, the Ida, and the Pingala nadis. And so I hope this information has been helpful and further helps to elaborate on what it is that we have discovered so far. I'm excited as I'm learning as well more about the chakras. And so this has been about the nadis. Thank you for watching, and until next time, take care of yourself and don't forget to breathe.